Hello YouTube, my name is Eddie Teodoro, and I wanted to take some time to answer comments on my channel. So, um, if you guys are new to the video, if it's your first time watching me, I'm a transgender individual. I call myself non-binary for the most part because I don't have a better word for it, but if you want to watch videos about my transition and my time on hormones, go ahead and just skip to one of those. It should be probably somewhere around linked. I don't know how the algorithm works, but I wanted to take some time to specifically address a comment that I got on my last video by one of you guys. So because it's a public comment, I feel comfortable reading it aloud. And if the person who wrote it doesn't feel comfortable, just, let me know so I don't do this again. It's a good comment. It's a good question. It's let me just read it out loud for you guys so you guys know what I'm talking about. It's from Apollonia93 about a week ago. Hey Ellie, this is actually a very straightforward question, but hard for me to ask concisely. Pardon the length of this. Yeah, go ahead. God knows I ramble. Okay, I know you brought the topic of a hysterectomy up a couple of times, saying your period or having those reproductive organs doesn't make you feel dysphoric. True, never did. I feel very differently about that, and so a hysterectomy was on the top of my personal list. Go ahead, bro. What I have been torn about is the oophorectomy. I'm sorry, it's a hard word. Cutting, well, basically he means to the removal of the ovaries. He or they, I'm sorry, yeah. You didn't mention your pronouns, so I'm just gonna go with they. Is that okay? Or should I go with he? He? Not knowing if keeping my ovaries would be better or worse for my physical and mental health long term. As you know, there are really no cohesive studies on this. If I were a binary trans man, the answer to this would be so clear to me. I agree, mate. There doesn't appear to be a good source of knowledge, and if you were a binary trans guy, you would probably know what you want done. My surgeon just told me to make sure to have one dominant sex hormone for obvious reasons. Menopause, osteoporosis, reversing the effects of testosterone, etc. Whether this ends up being testosterone or estrogen. Sure, with the ovaries intact, we can try to rely on our bodies producing estrogen naturally again should we want to quit testosterone permanently or temporarily, but nobody knows for sure if the ovaries are still fully capable of that after TRT. My surgeon said some make a full recovery, other get dysfunctional, other die off completely, and then there is the speculation of whether or not testosterone actually causes reproductive cancers. I know you voiced similar concerns of not being able to stay in the middle of the spectrum in the past. If this was probably from a social and gendered, even if it was probably from a social and gendered viewpoint, not being comfortable being read as male as a consequence of the masculization you desire, rather than a biological one, feeling dysphoric about the existence of your organs. Okay, that's an interesting distinction to make, and yeah, okay, you can go ahead and make that distinction, I don't mind. It's cool. People see what they see in your actions and in your words, so it's quite impossible to expect someone else to have a full, accurate description of you based on something you said or did. This isn't exactly what I would say about myself, but go on. If that's your version of me, that's okay. It's not that far away from the truth. I was wondering if your stance on any of this has changed a little. Now that you have found out for yourself how important masculinization is to you, how you felt during the time you stopped taking tea, and how all the gendered as male bullshit that goes along with this might not be as unpleasant and as consistently being read as female. Nikki. Nikki, first off, thank you for this comment. It's really a rich comment. I think you really bring a lot of important points. And I want to address them one by one. So first off, thank you for taking the time and the effort in asking this question. I'm gonna I'm going to start going through this. Hopefully, I'll address what you wanted me to address, and if I missed something, then feel free to let me know. Okay, so I never want to have a hysterectomy because even if no. Okay, I'm sorry, you guys. The cat had a cat moment where she just had to go and rub up against the camera, so she dropped the camera. Okay, so I never want to have a hysterectomy because, like you mentioned, you always want to have at least one dominant sex hormone in your system. And the way I look at it, there is really no way to guarantee that testosterone or estrogen in an exogenous form, that is taken from the outside, is going to be available for you for the entire span of your life. I mean, it's very nice that we live in a world today where this is available, but having lived through at least 3 wars that I can remember in Israel, I gotta say that the current peace and prosperity of the world could end at any moment, and maybe this is an apocalyptic view stemming from my hysteria, but I really don't want to do anything to my body where if I don't have constant care, I just won't be okay. So I would keep my ovaries no matter what, just for the chance that they might be functional when one day I don't want or don't have testosterone anymore. Okay? So that's just my take on it. The world has changed quite a lot in the past 60 years, and it's likely to change a lot more in the next 60, and I really want to be here to be able to enjoy it, at least, without osteoarthritis and osteoporosis and all the rest of the stuff and all the rest of the negative influences of menopause on the body in the absence of sex hormones. So that's my take on that. It's yeah. Now, I think it's true that maybe the ovaries can't produce estrogen as well as they had to after a long stint of testosterone. But I really don't have anything to go by, man, and it's been a while since I looked at the research. Like, you can go ahead and use PubMed just as much as I can, but I think this really requires, well, first off, your surgeon sounds pretty well informed, but this really requires some in-depth research, and if the studies don't exist, then they just don't exist, and you just take your chances, and I would go with a safe bet. I mean, if dysphoria for you is something that's worth risking risking a time of menopause in your life, then go ahead, do that. On the other hand, the cancer stuff, yeah, I don't know about that either. Like, I've heard that mentioned a couple of times, that if you want to be on testosterone long term, then there might be like an elevated risk of cancer in your reproductive organs. Man, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm gonna have to go and read that just as much as you have to. And once again, I'm looking at this like possible future where perhaps I won't have testosterone and I might need to rely on my ovaries to have a sex hormone in my body. And I just will have to wait to research. I mean, if it comes down to either you tie your tubes and either you remove your ovaries or you have an elevated risk of cancer, and that's kind of like a certified thing, then I might consider it. But I can't give a definitive answer right now. I know you voiced a similar concern of not being able to stay in the middle of the spectrum in the past. I'm kind of over that now. So being in the middle of the spectrum in a binary world is a fucking pain in the ass. now that I'm really anyone's guess, while in Spain it's a lot better, I did not like most of the treatment that I got in Israel. And for myself, while I might love myself and feel good right here, the social implication of not being read as either gender is kind of harsh. I mean, it could translate to physical insecurity, like just walking around not knowing how people gotta react to you. But it's also in the little things, like people just treat you better when they can classify you as one gender or another. And now that I'm starting to come out the other side of it as being read as male, Jesus, there's a lot of privilege that goes with that, and it feels a lot better. So I'm not as hung up about presenting as non-binary as I used to. And it has nothing to do with how I feel. I still feel, I guess, as I always felt, which is sort of in the middle. But because it makes the world an easier, nicer place, I'm considering to just go with that. Okay, not being comfortable, read as male, the consequence of masculinization you desire. Yeah, I used to think that. I used to think that I wanted to still be read as female while being extremely masculine. But now, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that what a person sees you as is not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of their childhood and their gender norms and who they are. So you have very little control over that. I have to remind you that I've been read as male when I was fully female, and I'm being read as female now when I'm closer to male than ever. So what it really is a reflection of the culture and the childhood and the socialization of the person that you're speaking to. And attaching too much value to this is just going to make you feel miserable. Having a secure sense of who you are is a lot better than expecting a certain reaction from the surroundings, And the more I do this, the better I feel. Rather than a biological feeling dysphoric about the existence of your organs. Yeah, well, there's a good point to it. I really don't have bottom dysphoria. A lot of trans people do. I don't. Thank God. I'm not a believer. I'm an atheist. But I mean, I'm really lucky to not have that problem. It would have been nice to have a penis for 4 hours in a day to do what I want to do with it, but it's really like a strap-on or a stand-to-pee device is quite enough. And I have to say, I enjoy this. I enjoy the experience of having intimate relations with the stuff that I have. So while I would want the person that I'm sleeping with to address my identity as it is and not assign a gender to it, or at least not assign a feminine gender to it, it doesn't really matter to me. I mean, I'm good with my junk. I can see how if you really want to assimilate as a guy, then you would assign a lot of importance to having a penis, because basically guys really like their penises, and that's cool. If you have something, you might as well like it. But I don't really assign a lot of importance to it. I can see how over the years living as a stealth trans guy, that moment of revealing your genitalia as anything other than cis-normative would become a painful issue in your life. But I lack that experience, and honestly, I don't think I'm gonna pass as a dude, at least not stealth. Not for the most part. Not with my lovers. It's a good question. It might change over time as well. I don't know. I used to be super cool about my breasts being out while I have intimate relations, and now I find that I would prefer to perhaps do that with a binder on. And might be the same with the bottom stuff. Yeah. Sex and how we are perceived. it's very hard to distinguish that from what we'd like our bodies to be for our own sake, and it is difficult to distinguish what we'd like our body to be for the sake of society than what we'd like it to be for ourselves. And I think if you're considering any kind of bottom surgery, I generally consider a hysterectomy as part of that. Is really to get to the down and gritty of why, and if your why is because that organ in your body causes a mismatch between your brain and your body and you're extremely dysphoric about it, that's a good reason to go and get something done, even if it does put you at risk for a bunch of unpleasant consequences, because you gotta live in this body. And as far as what society has to do with your body, you gotta kind of ask yourself, if I moved myself to a different society, such as moving from Israel to a European society, would things be better? And I gotta say that for me there. Or can I get some kind of internal change going where I don't give a shit what society thinks about me and my body? And maybe you can't, and if you can't move yourself from the context, then you can't change the way you feel about the context, and maybe it's a good enough reason to go ahead and have that hysterectomy with its possible causes, possible results. But I would take my sweet fucking time thinking about it, as I do with everything. I am considering to have laser hair removal should stuff ever grow in my back and shoulders. That is not a social thing. That is purely a me thing. I find hairy bodies, even cis male hairy bodies, like over the waist and up, I find that unattractive, and I don't want to be unattractive, but it's a beauty standard thing to me. It's not dysphoric. I don't perceive myself as a person with hair on their back, but then nobody does before they have hair on their backs. So I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Nikki, for bringing up this really good topic of conversation, and I hope anybody that really wants me to kind of like talk about a specific subject, just go ahead and ask that question. I know there's been a couple of questions that are good ones in the comments of older videos. I'll see if I can be bothered to go through them and do it. I don't mean to say that your questions, if you posted them, do not merit a response. I just mean to say that I'm awfully fucking busy. And I had the time to do this, and I hope I will have the time to do more. Alright, thank you, YouTube, for looking and listening, and I hope you have a very good 2020, and that you hit your transition goals and that they make you feel better.